Alright guys, so welcome to lesson 2.4. We're going to continue our discussion about combining functions. So this is part 2. So today we're going to be combining functions, but doing it not with equations or word problems, which was last time, but we're going to be doing it with tables and graphs. So we're going to be combining functions using tables and graphs. So that's our goal for the day. Alright, so example 1, we have a table here, and in this table we have some x values given. The x is your input, right? Then we have the f of x and g of x. Those are two different functions. So these are going to be the outputs for function 1, and these are the outputs for function 2. So instead of calling them function 1 and function 2, I guess we can just say f of x and g of x, right? So there you have it. So when x is -2, f of x is 8, and so on. So now what we want to do is we want to combine functions together. So for number 1 here, it says we want to create a new function called f of x minus g of x. Okay, so to do that, to find out what goes here, we need to figure out what I'm going to show my work on the side here. You do not need to show any work. It's pretty simple actually without doing it, but for teaching purposes I'm going to show you what I'm doing. So for this spot here, as you can see, the input is -2, so I'm going to put -2 here. Okay, now erase that. Now, let's figure out what is f of -2. So I'm going to go to the f row where x equals -2. And so f of -2 is 8, right? What's g of -2? Well, g of -2 is -5. And so we have 8 minus a -5, which is 8, plus 5, which is 13. Now, you don't need to show all this work. It's really quite simple. It's f minus g, right? So all we're doing is we're taking the f and subtracting from it the g. So 8 minus a -5 is 13. Let's do the next spot. For this one, it's going to be f minus g. What's 5 minus 2? 3. For the next one, it's f minus g. What is it? 0. Next one, f minus g is 1. F minus g is -4. This one's tricky. Watch out for your double negatives. F minus g is -1. All right? So there's our f minus g row. That's number 1. Now we're going to do the next one, number 2. Let me clean up my board a little bit. Circle on there. I'm going to get rid of that. All right. I don't like the different colors either. I'm going to change the colors. It's just my OCD acting up there. Okay. Next one. The next one is f minus 2 times g. Okay? F. Oh, it's not minus, it's plus, sorry. Plus 2 times g. All right, so if I want to fill in this spot here, I'm working with the x value -2, right? So we're going to plug a -2 in. What's -2? Well, f of -2. F of -2 is 8. And what's g of -2? Well, g of -2 is -5. So now we have 8 plus 2 times -5, which is -10. 8 plus a -10 is -2. There you go. Now, once again, you don't really need to show your work like that. You can just repeat the process from the next one. So, like if you wanted to plug in a -1 and repeat the process, you could do that, but it isn't necessary. I'll show you how to do it without that, but like I said, I'm just catching up with myself here. You can plug in -1 for the next column over and repeat, right? But it's a little bit easier than that. All you're doing is you're taking the f and adding it to 2 times the g. So for instance, what's 5 plus 2 times 2? 2 times 2 is 4, right? So if you add 5 to it, you get 9. So in other words, we're doubling the g and adding the f. So double the g, that's 8. Now add 4, that's 12. Double the g, that's 2. Add 2, that's 4. Double the g, that's 0. Add the f, -4. Last one, double the g, that's -10. Add the f. -6 and -10 makes -16. Okay, so once again, you don't have to show your work. You can just kind of take the columns, values that they give you, and go from there. So for this one, we need to do f of x times g of x. So we're taking the f value and the g value and multiplying them. So what goes here? Well, in the column for the x equals -2, f times g would be 8 times -5, which is -40. 5 times 2 would be 10. 4 times 4 would be 16. 2 times 1 is 2. 4 times 0 is 0. -6 times -5 is 30, not -30. I made boo there. All right, last one. So for the last one here, we're going to square the f and divide it by g. Square the f and divide it by g. So if I take the for this row here, let me write out my stuff here actually. Forgot to do that. All right, so for this box here, where x is equal to -2, we're going to square the f, and then we're going to divide it by g. So 8 squared is 64. And we're going to divide it by -5. And you can just leave it as a fraction, that's fine. Let's do another one. Square the f, divide it by g. So 25 over 2. Square the f, which is 16, right? Divide it by g, and this one we can actually simplify, so go ahead and put the simplified answer there. It's 4. Next one. Square the f. 2 squared is 4. Divide it by 1, you get 4 again. Square the f, that's 16. Divide it by 0, that's not possible. No solution. You can't divide by 0. Next one. Square the 6, you get 36. Divide it by -5. Got your answer. All right. So that is combining functions when you're working with tables. So let you guys go ahead and try some of this on your own now. Go ahead and do this, complete this table here. When you unpause the video, you should see the solution. And there's your solution. You might want to pause the video because I'm going to clear it off right now, so if you want to stare at it a little longer. Here we go. All right, now let's do graphs. Now this one's a little bit stickier. This one takes a little bit more time, maybe a little bit more confusing. It's not as obvious, but what we have here is we've got 2 functions that we're looking at. We have the graph of g, which I'll go ahead and I'm going to make that a green line here. G is what we're going to call the green one. And we'll call f the red one. So we have these 2 functions. So instead of representing these functions as equations and adding their equations, or instead of representing these functions as tables and adding together their values to create new table values for a combined function, we're going to represent these functions as graphs and we're going to add them together as graphs and see what kind of new graph that creates, okay? So the first thing that we might want to do is now I'm going to do this in two different ways, okay? One way is for my visual people who really kind of need to see my thinking on paper. The other way is for people who just kind of want a shortcut, okay? The other way is fast, but it's a little bit difficult to understand, okay? So let's see here. Well, you know what? Never mind. All right, let's go ahead and start here. So the first thing that I want you guys is we're going to make a table. And since we have an x, we have an f of x, and a g of x, our table needs to have an x, an f of x, and a g of x, just like the tables that we had before. So basically what we're going to do is, to solve this problem, is we're going to turn the graph into a table. And then we're going to use the same strategy we did last time, okay? Now, first of all, let's look at our graph. I went through and I put numbers on every point, okay? So first of all, let's get all the x values that are actually labeled. Like here I see a 0 for x. I see another 0, but you don't need to write that twice, okay? We only need the x value once. The reason it's there twice is because there's two different y values because we have two different functions, okay? What's the next x value that we see? The next one I see is 2. The next one I see is 4. And yes, you do want to be putting these in order, right? Smallest to largest x value. The next one I see is 6, and once again there's 2 of those, but we only need to write it once in the table because in our table we have the two different y values, but those are going to go in for the two different functions. And then finally the last x value is 7. So those are all the x values I got. And so now, clean up my board a little bit. I don't like how it's all messy. Oh, I lost the color on my graphs. I'm going to have to put those back. Just a second. Let me try that again. I want this to be color-coded. That's not the right color. There we go. Green and red, just like we said. All right. So here we go. Let's go ahead and let's do the f function first, the red one. So for the red one, when x is 0, what is the y value? On the red function, when x is 0, y is -7. All right, for the red function, when x is 2, what is the y value? 0. When x is 4, what is the y value on the red function? It's 4. When x is 6, what is the y value on the red function? That would be right here, 0. When x is 7, what's the y value on the red function? It's -5. See if you guys can fill in the G one really quick. Pause the video and see if you can accurately fill it in. All right, so when x is 0, the y value on the green function is 2. Okay? When x is 2, right? When x is 2, on the green function, the y value is 0, just like it is with the red. And that's because they have the same point because they're crossing there. How about when x is 4? When x is 4, on the green function, the y value is -2. When x is 6 for the green function, the y value is -4. And then finally, once again, the two lines cross at 7, -5, so they both have the same y value there. All right, so there's my table. So now what I'm going to do is, I'm going to do number 1. So the first thing I did was I went ahead and I made a table, okay? And now I'm going to do the f of x times g of x function. because they want me to graph that one. So we have the graph of f, we have the graph of g. They want me to graph f of x times g of x. Okay, so f of x times g of x is going to be 7 times 2 is going to be negative 14. 0 times 0 is 0. 4 times negative 2 is negative 8. 0 times 4 is 0. Negative 5 times negative 5 is 25. Okay, so what we have then is we've got a lot of points that we can graph. I can graph the point 0, negative 14. So when x is 0, f of x times g of x has negative 14 as an answer. When x is 2, f of x times g of x is 0, and so on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to plot all these points on my graph and connect the dots, and that'll be my new graph. So 0, negative 14, it's not going to fit on my screen, so I'll just put it here. Being a little ghetto there, but hey, it happens. So 0, negative 14, 2, 0. And then 4, negative 8. Probably be like right about here. 6, 0. Same point. And then 7, 25. That would be like way up here. And if I connect those dots in order, starting with the first one, we go up, down, up, like so. So that purple thing that I just drew is a new graph. And that new graph is the graph of f of x times g of x. So I combined the red line with the green line, and it created a new line, the purple line. Now the way that I did it was, once again, the first thing that I did was I turned the red line and the green line into a table, right? After I did the table, I took the problem I wanted to do and I completed the table, which gave me some points which I could graph and draw, okay? You could do it that way, right? However, I want to show you guys something a little bit easier. But before I do, let's have you guys do a problem really quick here. Let me erase some stuff real quick. Get rid of that purple line now. Okay, so on this next slide that's coming up, I want you guys to make a table. I think I'll just erase everything. What the heck? I'm just gonna on this slide that's coming up here, I want you guys to make a table. All right, so go ahead and make the table here for x, f of x, and g of x. So in other words, find all the points on this red line, find all the points on this green line, and put them in your table. Pause the video and see if you guys can complete the table, and when you unpause it, you'll see the solution. Just the table for now. We're not doing number 1. All right, this is what you guys should have gotten. We have all the data on there. The x's go from -8, -6, -4, and then 0 and 2. There's more points up there. You could do more, but I just did all the ones that actually have dots on them there. And then the green function there contains all the y values that go with those x values for the green line. And then the red for g of x there contains all the y values that go with the x values on the red line. So there's that. Now you guys are ready for the next step here on this problem. The next step would be to make a new row, and you guys are going to do, let's do purple. Number 1 now, f of x plus g of x. So the first thing I want you guys to do is I want you to go through and complete this table for f of x plus g of x. Pause the video here. When you're done, you'll see the solution. All right, and there you go. Now I want you guys to plot the points for this function. So you have the x value and the y value, right? So that's a point. So plot that point and connect the dots. Pause the video and try to get your graph, and when you're done, you'll see my solution. So I wrote them as points up here at the top, right? Like -8, -2, that's a point. -6, -1, that's a point. And once I got all those points, I plotted them and connected them, and there's the new graph, f of x plus g of x. Okay? Now that's the long way to do the problem. I'm going to do the second one in a little bit of a different way. Okay? Let me go back now to the teacher example, and I'm going to do the other one. Now, before I do number 2, I want to do number 1 again. Okay? But this time, I'm going to do it in a different way, and it's faster. Now, as you guys know, f of x and g of x, those are y values, right? So you're taking the y value for the f, and you're multiplying it by the y value for the g. So let's start with our first x value on our graph, which is 0, right? So for that first x value, we have 2 and 7. Those are my y values. So I'm just going to multiply those. What's 2 times -7? That's -14. So I'll just put a dot in line with those, right? At -14. The next x value, 2. Well, both functions have the same y value there. They're both 0. So 0 times 0 is 0. Next one. The next x value is x equals 4. My y values are 4 and -2. So what's 4 times -2? -8. So right in line with those two dots, I would put one right below them at should be -8 actually. It's a little bit further down than 7. I think I might have did that wrong the first time as well. Next one. The next x value is 6. The y values for that are 0 and -4. So if you multiply 0 times -4, you get 0. So for 6, my new function is going to be at 0 because -4 times 0 is 0. Next one, the next x value is 7, and for both functions, the y value is -5. So -5 times -5 is a positive 25, so my new point will be at 25 for x equals 7. So that's a faster way. I lost it. There it is. That's a faster way to do it without doing the table. Okay, so I'm going to apply that faster method now to this new problem. Okay. Now, if you guys are taking notes on the notes that you printed out, I would use a different colored pen for number 2, just so that you can differentiate the answers from 1 and 2. Or if you want, you can just make a whole new graph. It's up to you. Just make sure that your notes are useful to you. Now, when it comes to subtraction, the order matters. Okay, so it's g of x minus f of x. So I'm going to say that g is the green line, and I'm going to say that f is the red line here, okay? I'll pick 2 different colors this time, just in case anybody's colorblind out there. I know that green and red are the weird ones if you're colorblind. So I'll do brown, and I'll do blue. There we go. So let's say that it's blue and brown there. So G is going to be the blue one. F is the brown one. Now, when you're doing subtraction, the order matters. It has to be blue minus brown. Okay? So here we go. So for my first pair of points that have an x value of 0, blue minus brown, 2 minus a -7. That would be 9. So somewhere way up here at y equals 9. Okay? So for blue minus brown, the x value stays the same, 0, but you do blue minus brown. So 2 minus a -7, you get 9. Next one, right there. For the x value of 2, blue and brown are the same. They're both 0 for the y value. So 0 minus 0 is still 0, so I'm going to put a dot here. Next one, for the x value of 4, blue minus brown is going to be -2 minus 4, which is -6. So for x value of 4, we have a -6. For the next one, we have an x value of 6, blue minus brown is going to be -4 minus 0, which is -4. Last point for x equals 6, they both have the same y value, -5. -5 minus -5 is 0. So for x equals 7, my new line is going to be up here at 0. So if I connect these dots that I just made in order, starting up here, comes down, boom, 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 and boom. And there's my new graph. Now, that I have found that teaching it that way is confusing to some people, so I started off with the table. So if you didn't like what I just did, if that was really weird to you, then don't worry about it. Just use the table method. It takes a little bit longer, but hey, it makes sense to you. But for some of you guys, this graphing method made sense, and I would say use this because it's faster. Okay? So I don't care what method you choose to use, but I'm going to give you a second problem here. So for those of you guys that liked the new way of doing it without a table, I'm going to say go ahead and try to create the new graph here without the table. And for those of you guys that prefer the table method, then go ahead and use the table. And you've already made the table for this problem earlier, so just go back to it now and create a new row. You guys are going to be doing f of x times g of x now. So go ahead and pause the video, and when you're all done, I'll show you the new graph. So that's what it should have looked like. Now I did it without the table, but for those of you guys who did use the table, I'll show you what that should look like. And so there's the table, and I've got the points listed out there down there at the bottom, but those are the same points that I already have on the graph over there. So there's that. All right, and that does it for our lesson for the day. This is just a little thing I threw in there to talk about it. There is a meaning when you have two functions, f of x and g of x, and you subtract them. What does that mean? So like, for instance, if let's say that this was like 4 and this was like -2. What does it mean to say f of x minus g of x? Well, let's put an x value here. Say this x value here is like maybe 4 also. Well, if I plug in that x value of 4, f of 4 is 4, right? And g of 4 is -2. So 4 minus a -2, or 4 plus 2, is 6. Now, but what does that 6 mean? Well, what that 6 basically is telling you, it's telling you how far away this dot is from this dot. It tells you the distance between the functions. Okay, this one's at 4, this one's at -2. So 4 minus a -2 tells you how far apart they are. The answer is 6. Okay, it's not a big deal. I'm just telling you that there's a geometric implication. What does f of x minus g of x tell you? It basically tells you how far apart the functions are from each other. Okay, so that being said, we are done for the day. So that week is over with, and we'll move it on to next week.